In the studio, we meet Associate Professor Scott Madry, an archaeologist at the University of North Carolina. Welcome, Professor.
Howdy. Thanks so much.
Paul Curnow is here, lecturer at the Adelaide Planetarium. Welcome, Paul.
Hello.
Two flat tyres. He got two flat tyres.
Two flat tyres, not just one.
So
Two
he
flat
used
tyres.
his spare, way up in the Donga and the Flinders Ranges, chasing stars.
I was indeed, I was.
Impressing a girl, he was.
Oh, okay, okay.
You've been to Australia before.
Oh, yes, this is my fourth time. I teach every summer at UniSA at the Mawson Lakes campus. We run an International Space University space program, an international space program for 5 weeks every year, and bring students from all over the world who study all aspects of space and space technology. Have a great time. We love it down here.
You're an archaeologist.
Yes, I am. I have a PhD in archaeology and have been a practicing archaeologist for over 30 years now.
When I grew up, I wanted to be, when I was a kid, I wanted to be an archaeologist. But two things that I lack. One, physics, or really any interest in physics and mathematics. And secondly, patience.
It is a study which requires a great deal of patience. It can take years, decades, to get the kind of things that we're looking for. So yes, one does have to have a lot of patience. But the other thing a lot of our students coming into the field don't realize is, in a lot of ways, it's more like working construction than it is anything else. So it requires a lot of physical labor.
Why? What do you call? We call them dinky cars here. Little toy car, metal cars.
Yeah, little children's toys. Yes.
Almost, if you dig in almost every backyard, you find an old dinky car.
Yes.
Why
Well,
is
and that's the nature of humanity. We produce lots of things and we throw them away. And it's good for us because that's what archaeology is the study of human societies and people through the analysis of their material culture. And so it's a good thing for us that ancient Romans, Aztecs, Stone Age people from around the world threw their children's toys away, and now thousands of years later we get to find them.
I'm a great admirer of Tutankhamun because of his sense of interior design. I'm with him. You just pack it all in and hope for the best. But those Egyptians really proves you can't take it with you.
Well, it's so true. But they're blessed with a tremendously dry, arid environment, and that really, the preservation of materials was just extraordinary. And I actually have a colleague, Sarah Parsak, who is an Egyptologist, and she does the same type of work that I do in using satellites and satellite remote sensing to discover sites. And she has a great deal of good fortune in doing that in Egypt, again, because it's so dry and desert and works very well.
What's still to be found?
Way more than we have found by now.
Really?
Oh, yes. It's... humans have occupied this planet extensively, and they leave the material remains behind. And every week, every day in the newspaper, there's something. Somebody is digging a canal or putting a new home in, and it's all down there waiting to be found.
Yes. Well, if you look at Aboriginal remains.
Oh yes, absolutely.
Often being turned up.
Yes.
Often, alas, bodies. And all kinds of evidences of their civilization.
Yes, and of course we get into some interesting ethical issues of who has the right to study these things. But I'm a scientist, and so my perspective is that science is an overriding goal, and as long as we treat these material remains with respect and in many cases return them.
Which we haven't, because it's been plunder, hasn't it, for millennia.
And that's a tremendous problem even today. In fact, much of the work that I do in using satellites to actually locate sites, unfortunately, is because of the plunder and looting. There's a tremendous amount of looting of our common cultural heritage. And once these sites are destroyed by a bulldozer or people with shovels, the scientific value is totally lost. And so we, unfortunately, have a tremendous amount of looting of sites going on for commercial purpose, for money.
What can you tell, Professor Scott Madry, from above?
Well, I have worked for many years using satellites to discover the remains of archaeological sites under the ground. And traditionally, we have a field called aerial archaeology, and this really dates back all the way to World War I, when we had archaeologists on all sides of the war who were in the newly invented air corps. And they would look down and they would see these faint patterns on the ground. And several of them after the war, who were professional archaeologists, said that this is strange. We need to try and understand. And what happens is you can see some of these very faint linear patterns, circles, squares, from above in the air, and you just cannot see them if you walk right over the same field. And so we've used aircraft for decades throughout the world, in Australia, Europe, the Americas, everywhere. Charles Lindbergh was actually one of the original founders of doing this. But now we have these amazing satellites that have very, very high, what we call spatial resolution. And so we can literally, I can sit in my office in North Carolina or in my hotel room here in Mawson Lakes, and I, using my laptop and Google Earth, I can explore the world. And it's a bit like radiology. You have to be trained to look at what the patterns are. I can look at an X-ray, but I can't tell what it is. But an archaeologist who's trained in this type of work can see these very faint patterns of circles, linear patterns, squares, and these very often are indications of old human occupations.
And there may still be evidence there.
Very often. Usually there is. So I work primarily in Western Europe, although I've done a lot of work also in the Americas as well. And traditionally, as I said, we would walk out in the fields, we would fly airplanes around, and now with these amazing new satellites, we have been able to find hundreds, literally hundreds of archaeological sites that no one has ever found, simply looking at a computer screen and using the free Google Earth.
I'm fascinated by the Mayan and the Aztec and their attitude to alignment, which used Paul, the stars, the sun, and they used that very expertly. They understood, didn't they?
Oh, sorry, you're asking me. Probably Scott's a lot more qualified to ask that. My specialty is in how they saw the night sky, but as far as the archaeoastronomy side of things, Scott's probably better qualified to answer that.
Well, and it is a fascinating whole subfield of the discipline of archaeology, but we have to give these ancient peoples the credit that they're due. And they were extraordinarily capable in mathematics, in analyzing their world. I think in many ways they were far more attuned to their natural environment than we are. Sitting in this beautiful studio here in this lovely building, they lived their whole lives in a much more intimate relationship with nature and their environment, including the sky. And so their, especially in Mesoamerica, their development of mathematics, of astronomy, of science were far beyond what the state was in Western Europe at that time.
Now, we're not talking about, remember, Eric von Daniken.
Oh, yeah.
I remember him quite well.
I figured we'd get to him.
Because he was... he had a vogue in the 70s, early 80s, didn't he, with all that sort of...
Chariots of the Gods.
Yes, the aliens.
I remember it well, and it still comes up every time I give a public talk like I'm giving tomorrow night downtown.
Where is it?
That'll be downtown, Paul
The Kerr Grant Lecture Theatre at Adelaide University. It's in the physics building on the second floor. So,
Good.
so come down to Adelaide University.
Excuse me, what time?
Physics building, 8 p.m. it starts.
Good.
Yeah. Now, there is a beginners meeting at 7 p.m, so don't get a shock if you walk in and you see people in there.
Is it free, Paul?
It is absolutely free, but I recommend you get there a little bit early in order to grab a seat.
In the Kerr Grant Lecture Theatre in the Physics Department of Adelaide University tomorrow night.
And I'll show a bunch of the pictures of the kinds of features that we can see. From my work in Western Europe, I'll also show some pictures of Peru, and it's really quite fascinating, and it brings us to another whole world where my students now can do research, can do investigation, and actually find archaeological sites in ways that we never really were able to do before by accessing space technologies.
Good.
Yes, it is good.
Because there's all that hardware up there, and half the time we don't know what it's doing, only that it's watching us.
Well, it's watching and it's listening, but in the end, they're just tools. And it's how we use these tools, what purpose. It's just like those flint knives that we find from thousands of years ago. These things are just tools built by human hands and human imaginations, and it's how we use those tools. And my goal is to use these satellite technologies, very advanced capabilities, to look at the heart of what it means to be a human being.
Do you then, having found these sites, do you then go there, Professor?
Oh, yes, that's the fun.
Yeah,
The goal is, so yes, I work with many colleagues, primarily in Western Europe, and we want to go there. We need to. There are many what we call false positives. I'll see something, I'll show some of these tomorrow night. It looks for all the world like some ancient Roman structure or something, and it's a modern gas line or something, or a water ditch. And so you really always have to go on the ground. All this high-tech stuff will never replace the basic science of archaeology. In the end, we have to go on the ground, test it, and in the end, excavate and go down and see what we have.
Machu Picchu would have been more easily found, wouldn't it?
Yes, it would have, and in fact, we are finding these days dozens of new remote archaeological sites using these satellite techniques.
Because that was the 20th century find, wasn't it?
Yes, very early.
Hiram Bingham.
Yeah.
Very early, yes, and amazing, and there's amazing things still out there to be found today.
And you're looking.
You better believe it. You better, and my students better be looking while I'm down here in Australia.
It's a passion for you.
Yes, of course. All of science is a passion of discovery, of knowledge. But archaeology especially, there's a bit of the hunt involved. You work very hard. You try, and oftentimes we come away with nothing, and which makes, when we do actually discover something new, something exciting, something that tells us about our world and our human ancestry, it's very rewarding.
Of course. Well, we hope to see you back here again, Professor, and you're very welcome. Tomorrow night, the Kerr Grant Lecture Theatre, the Department of Physics at Adelaide University, for 8 o'clock.
8 p.m.
And it goes for...
about an hour, and then with a little bit of business, probably we'll be finished by 9:30.
Is that all? Okay, an hour.
Now, were you here for this heat, Professor?
Oh, yes, I was. Yeah. But one of the great things about that, I get 2 summers every year.
Yes, of course.
It's freezing cold and snowing at home,
yes.
and so I've been enjoying the heat, and I love coming to Australia. People are extremely kind, and it's a great place. I like coming here.
Good. Well, thank you for saying so. I wish you well, Professor. Pleasure to meet you.
Thank you so much.
And thank you, Paul Curnow, again, for bringing us the Professor. Thank you.
Great to be here.
Associate Professor Scott Madry, an archaeologist. There we are, here on the evening show on 891 826.